Friday, it's Census Day, which is the deadline for everyone to return their U.S. Census form, unless you want a visit from a federal worker. The forms count the number of people in each household and are used to allocate federal money and congressional seats. But some will be asked dozens of questions about intimate private behavior that occurs within the household. Plus, the government will demand each form that you receive be answered or you pay a fine. Is this constitutional? Is it an invasion of privacy? Here to explain, Kevin Gutzman. He's an associate professor of history at Western Connecticut State University. He's also the author of the terrific book, The Politically Incorrect Guide to the Constitution. And Ilya Shapiro, he's a senior fellow in constitutional studies at the Cato Institute and the editor-in-chief of the Cato Supreme Court Review. Ilya, to you first. Has the Supreme Court itself ever declared whether or not the questions beyond how many persons reside in this house as their principal residence are constitutional?
There is some what's called dicta, meaning kind of offhand remarks from a very old case about 140 years ago to the effect that it is. But that was not at all the case presented before the Supreme Court, so there really is no four-square ruling on the question.
Have lower federal courts, Kevin, looked at the questionnaire that was sent out a few weeks ago? I'm talking about the one that asks about nationality, religion, ethnicity, gender, number of bathrooms, when you go to work, when you go to bed, those type of personal questions. Has any court scrutinized those questions?
Not in any case that I'm aware of, no.
All right. So how do we get from the Constitution saying, well, we have to have a House of Representatives, so we have to know how many people live there, because the House of Representatives is apportioned by population. How do we get from that in the Constitution to this 20-page form that wants to know everything about me?
Well, the reason is that we have a nanny state, and people in the federal government want to have all kinds of details about your personal life so that they can, down the road, legislate about them.
Does the government have the right to ask this stuff, Ilya? I mean, isn't there a basic right to privacy which says I don't have to tell you, even though it's not going to kill me to say it, but I have a certain sense of personal dignity that I don't want the government to come across the threshold of my front door?
Right. Well, there's two issues here. First of all, does the government have the power? And I would say it doesn't, because the Article 1, Section 2 says that an enumeration shall be made, indeed, for the apportionment of representatives in Congress. Beyond that, it's silent. And on the other hand, people do have a right to privacy and to not having to do things when the government commands them to do things. We have all sorts of rights. So on both of those sides, this is a questionable practice. And as you've said, some of these questions are just ridiculous. Like, do you need help? How many people in your household need help bathing or dressing, for example?
Well, why does the government want to know this stuff? I mean, how does this advance the cause of government? What is the source of their appetite for this information?
Well, there's a difference between the appetite and what's constitutional. Of course, these people have the idea that
Talk to me about the appetite.
Well, I think they want to improve every aspect of your life, whether it's the filament in the light over your head or the plunger in your toilet. And before they can do that, they have to know how many plungers and how many filaments you have. So essentially, they have an unconstitutional program, and they intend to further it by first gathering information about you. I think one point, though, that needs to be made is that not only do we not have any grant to Congress of power to do this kind of thing, but we have an explicit reservation of all the powers that aren't granted to the states. So
or to the people respectively.
That's right. So the 10th Amendment stands explicitly for the idea that Congress should not be doing this.
Ilya, as I understand the law, a lot of people email me about this, so we did the research. The government can fine you $100 for every unanswered question, $500 for every wrongfully answered question, a maximum of $5,000 for whatever you do on the form that the government doesn't like, and there's no jail time involved. Do you think people are just going to send the government a check and tell them to go take a hike?
Well, I've tried to look this up as well, and I've only been able to find 7 times when people have been actually prosecuted and fined, twice after the 1960 census and 5 times after the 1970 census. And each time was either a $50 or $100 fine, and that's it. And all of those times, the people were outspoken census protesters, let's say. So, you know, if you just send it back and don't make a fuss, that's probably a good strategy for, you know, a census worker might come or something, but it's unlikely that you'll be prosecuted for it.
Okay, Professor, here's my hypothetical. I'm in my living room and there's a knock on the door. An FBI agent shows up and a census taker. The FBI agent is there to arrest me, puts me in handcuffs. The census taker is there to ask me these 34 million questions. The census taker says, answer the questions. The FBI agent says, you have a right to remain silent. So do I have more rights as a person being arrested than I do when the census taker comes into my house?
Well, I think the point you're getting at is that the Fourth Amendment would protect you if you were suspected of being a criminal, but seemingly the Congress is asserting that if you aren't suspected of being a criminal, they can make you divulge this kind of information that would be a secret or would be entirely up to you to retain for yourself in case you weren't suspected of having done anything.
Ilya, I can only imagine what it'll be like 10 years from now. We looked at the census from 10 years ago. It was peanuts compared to this one. Every year, the appetite of the government for our private information grows greater. What can we do about it?
Well, you know, we can go on shows and watch shows like you're doing now, and write letters to the editor, complain to our congressman, and try to rein in this indeed growing government that tries to aggrandize itself at each point. And if you look at just the marketing of the census this year, it's kind of like a lottery. You can't win if you don't play. It's this idea that government has to grow and has to provide us more goodies, and the only reason it's there is to be a trough where we can eat more stuff. It really goes against the founding principles of this republic.
Do you think that the government will keep this information, or strike the government? Do you think that the Commerce Department will keep this information private and to itself as it claims it is? Do you think anybody takes that promise seriously, Kevin?
Well, we don't have any reason to think that they would keep this kind of thing secret. There's never been any success in any government effort to keep this kind of information secret. But one point that does need to be made is that a lot of people seem to be upset with this long census form, and so they are omitting to respond to the census at all.
It should respond the number of people that live there.
That's right. Otherwise, their own districts are going to be underrepresented in their state legislatures, and their states will be underrepresented in Congress. So they should respond to the constitutional questions.
Kevin Gutzman, Ilya Shapiro, thanks very much for joining us.